I don't believe that Adelaide will ever be able to carry a child.
You will not ever be able to become a mother, Adelaide.
I have to find the secret.
Autumn came softly to Hargrove Crossing that year, and with it came a peace Adelaide Foster had never quite believed she'd earn. The farmhouse that once sheltered her from a storm was hers now, in every sense that mattered. Her mornings began the same way, each day. The smell of wood smoke, the sound of Marcus, already up, already out with the animals, before the sun had cleared the tree line, and the quiet of a house that finally, truly, belonged to her. She had married a man who remembered how she took her coffee. She hadn't expected he would also remember, after 3 years apart, the way she liked her eggs, or which side of the bed let her see the window at sunrise. Small things, but small things, she was learning, were what a real marriage was built from. Not grand gestures, not danger, survived. Just 1,000 quiet mornings, like this one. Marcus, for his part, still caught himself watching her across the breakfast table, as though she might vanish if he looked away too long. 3 years of waiting had taught him not to trust good fortune easily. Hargrove Crossing welcomed her back, without much fuss. She was, after all, no stranger, only a woman, returned to where she'd always half belonged. The women at church took her back into their circles, as though no time had passed at all. The farmers who bought Marcus's grain teased him, gently, about finally making an honest woman of the girl he'd loved since he was 14. If anyone in town knew the truth of what she'd survived to get here, the Bramwells, the Ledger, the 4 days on muddy roads, with death at her heels, they were kind enough not to speak of it. In Hargrove Crossing, a person's past belonged to them alone, unless they chose to share it. In the evenings, after the chores were done, they'd sit together on the porch, where he'd once caught her, collapsing into his arms during a thunderstorm. Now, the storms felt like something to watch from safety, rather than something to run from. She would mend. He would tend to some small repair or another, and neither of them felt any need to fill the silence with words. They had done enough talking, in that first storm-soaked week, to last a lifetime. Now, there was simply the comfort of being near one another. It was, Adelaide thought more than once that autumn, the first home she had ever chosen entirely for herself. She did not yet know how much she would come to want more than this quiet, ordinary happiness. Nor did she know how soon that wanting would begin to test them both. Winter passed, then spring, and with the changing seasons came a new kind of hope. Quiet at first, barely spoken aloud, Adelaide would catch herself watching the neighboring farms, watching young mothers with children at their skirts, and something in her would ache. Softly, hopefully, Marcus never pushed, never asked more than she offered, but she knew, from the way he looked at the empty room upstairs, that he was hoping too. Month after month, they waited. Months after months, nothing came. They told themselves it was early yet. These things took time. Adelaide's own mother had waited 3 years for her first child, so they waited, patient, hopeful, but somewhere, in the quiet space between hope and disappointment, a small worry began to take root. Neither of them spoke it aloud. Not yet. By the second summer, the worry had grown too large to ignore. Marcus finally suggested what neither of them had wanted to say, that perhaps it was time to see the doctor. Dr. Whitlock had served Hargrove Crossing for 30 years. Gentle, trusted, he examined Adelaide with the same care he'd shown every family in the county. There was, he told them, no obvious cause for concern, only time and patience, and perhaps a little help along the way. He introduced his new assistant, a woman recently arrived in the county. Skilled, he said, trained in matters he himself knew less of. Her name was Vivienne Ashworth. She was, Adelaide thought, immediately likable. Warm, attentive. The kind of woman who made you feel, within minutes, as though she'd always been a friend. Vivienne offered remedies, herbal tonics, gentle guidance on timing and care. Adelaide took every suggestion, gratefully. Hopefully, she did not know that with each new remedy, hope was quietly being undone. That night, in a small rented room above the general store, Vivienne sat alone by candlelight. She took up her pen. My dear Lord. Weeks passed. Vivienne became a familiar presence at the farmhouse, checking on Adelaide's progress, offering comfort where the doctor's visits felt too clinical. She was, everyone agreed, a genuine blessing to the family. One afternoon, she found Marcus alone in the barn, Adelaide resting inside, exhausted from another difficult week. Vivienne's voice was gentle, careful. The voice of someone bearing news she wished she didn't have to share. Marcus, she said, I don't know how to tell you this. He set down his tools, waited. I don't believe, she said softly, that Adelaide will ever be able to carry a child. The words landed like a physical blow. I haven't told her, Vivienne continued. I didn't want to take that hope from her myself. I thought, perhaps you would know best how to tell her, or whether to tell her at all. Marcus said nothing, could say nothing. Vivienne rested a hand gently on his arm. I'm so sorry. I know how much you both want this. He thanked her for her honesty, for her kindness in bringing him such a painful truth so gently. He did not yet know that it was not the truth at all. That night, Vivienne wrote again, by candlelight, My dear Lord. Marcus carried the weight alone. He could not bring himself to say it. Not to Adelaide, not yet. What good, he told himself, would it do to take from her the one hope she still held on to? So he said nothing, and the nothing grew heavier with each passing day. Adelaide noticed the change in him, the distance in his eyes, at breakfast, the way he no longer spoke of the future, the way he once had. She did not know why, only that something had shifted, and Vivienne, ever present, ever gentle, was there to comfort him, a hand on his shoulder, a quiet word when Adelaide wasn't near. Adelaide saw it, once or twice, the closeness, and an old fear, one she thought she'd long buried, began to stir. Am I not enough? Will he leave? The way I once feared, that I might lose everything. Vivienne had only ever been kind to both of them. She wanted, desperately, to believe that. That night, she wrote once more. It was Adelaide, in the end, who broke the silence. She found Marcus on the porch one evening, staring out at nothing. She sat beside him, waited. Marcus, she said quietly, please, tell me what's wrong. And so, finally, he did. He told her everything Vivienne had said, the words he'd carried alone for weeks. Adelaide sat very still. Marcus, she said slowly, that isn't what Dr. Whitlock told me. He said there was no cause for concern, only time. Marcus turned to her, confusion replacing grief. She told me, he said. She told me you would never. He stopped. Something, in both of them, went cold. Why? Adelaide whispered. Would she tell you something so different from what the doctor told me? Neither of them had an answer, but for the first time in weeks, they faced the question together, not apart. Marcus took her hand. Whatever this is, he said, we'll find the truth of it, together. Autumn returned to Hargrove Crossing. Marcus and Adelaide, closer now than the confusion had ever pulled them apart, continued to search for answers, quietly, carefully. The town, meanwhile, carried on as it always had. It was a market day when the stranger first appeared. A man none in Hargrove Crossing recognized. Long hair, unkempt, a heavy beard covering whatever face lay beneath it. He kept to himself, spoke little, gave a name that meant nothing to anyone. Nobody thought much of it. Strangers passed through from time to time, but in a small room above the general store, Vivienne Ashworth stood at her window, watching him cross the street below. Something in her expression shifted. Recognition. She did not move for a long moment. Then, slowly, she turned from the window and began once more to write, "My dear Lord." The next day, Vivienne walked through town as she always did, composed, unhurried. The market was busy. Vendors called out prices. Children wove between stalls. She had errands to run, a visit to the general store, a word with the seamstress about a torn hem. She did not expect to see him. He stood across the street, near the feed store. Long hair, a heavy beard, a stranger's name, meaning nothing to Hargrove Crossing. But Vivienne knew that face, even changed, even hidden. Their eyes met through the crowd, a moment far longer than it was. Neither spoke, neither moved. Around them, the town carried on, unaware. A cart rattled past. A child laughed nearby. He looked away first, and walked on, vanishing between two buildings. Vivienne stood still a moment longer, then turned away too, as though nothing had happened. But something had. She never finished her errands. She returned home and sat a long while, saying nothing. That afternoon, Vivienne visited the farmhouse again. She had dressed with particular care, every detail deliberate. Adelaide welcomed her warmly, grateful for her kindness. Vivienne offered fresh remedies, gentle as ever, and asked after her health. But it was Marcus her gaze lingered on, a moment longer than courtesy required. He noticed. He said nothing. She left, as gracefully as she'd arrived. That evening, Marcus and Adelaide sat together in the quiet kitchen. "I don't trust her," Adelaide said finally. "I haven't for some time." Marcus nodded slowly. "Neither do I." They agreed that night to set aside every remedy she'd given them. Vivienne returned home as the last light faded. She lit a candle, sat at her desk, and reached for a fresh page. But a page was already there, waiting. Unfamiliar handwriting. Only a few words. "Meet me at the back of the graveyard tonight." She stared at it a moment, her composure gone. Marcus and Adelaide's story is far from over, and neither is Vivienne's. If you've enjoyed watching their love survive storms, secrets, and now the quiet ache of a family they're fighting to build, let us know down in the comments. We want to hear your predictions. Who do you think left that note? What do you think Vivienne is really hiding? Drop your theories below. We might just feature the best ones in episode 3. If you're new here, welcome to our channel. New stories every third day. Full, immersive, narrated love stories you can lose yourself in. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. We'll see you at the graveyard.